Well, hello and welcome again to the Wealthy Warlock. Here we are. What a lovely day it is. I hope it's snowing or doing something fascinating where you are because, fascinating's good. Boring's boring, as the case may be. Yeah. So today we're here to talk about five senses. Our five senses. These things that we use to dictate our reality with. Now, this is a huge subject, but I feel like we should just get it started, dive straight in. Sight, smell, touch, taste, hearing. What did I say? Sound. Okay. Everyone knows their five. I hope everyone knows their. Everyone except for me knows their five senses. Now, not many people are aware, but what we've got in terms of these is a filtering system. Right? Now we usually think of these as positive things, but I'm here today to flip you and go in the other direction. So I want you to think of your senses as limiting factors instead of things that open up the world for you. All right. So instead of looking at your eyes as a way for you to see light, I want you to think and consider this for a second. Of the entire light spectrum, of what we call the entire light spectrum, we humans pick up what we classically call visible light, otherwise known as white light, and that's they say about 0.01% of the entire light spectrum. So when you really think about it, our eyes cut out a whole bunch of stuff just simply by the structure of them. Okay, now there are ways in which we could talk about things that have no point in any sort of conversation aside from just fun, like the fact that there are some shrimp or plankton out there that have 16 conicals in their eye. The way in which we know that dogs and other animals don't see the same colors that we do. And then I love it how we automatically make assumptions after that. Like, okay, well, if we don't see colors like we do, then we just see what we see, but without colors. Like, a dog sees exactly the same as we see, except black and white and grey. And I don't know, some people say a little bit of red. There's a problem with this. You see, what we think of as taking colour out of reality is not the same as taking colour out of a TV screen, okay, or an image. If you look at me right now, you're looking at a TV screen. But if you look anywhere else around you in your vicinity, if you're in a room, anywhere in the room, if you're outside in a park, anywhere around you outside in the park, wherever you may happen to be, if you have a look at anything else around you, if we took away the color of what you see, you wouldn't see what is there. Okay? In real life, when you take color away, black and white is not left. Okay? Black and white are aspects of patterns that we've got inside of our mind, the same as all of the other colors. So if I take red away from my vision right now, then I'm not going to see the red things. They're not going to show up as black or grey or spectrums of greys, depending upon the shading of the red. No, it's not going to register. Okay? Because what's happening, if we think about the processes and these, as we go through high school and we learn about basic biology and our physical senses, we're told things and then that are immediately preceded by things like, it's kind of like that, or it's basically the same, it's pretty much identical. You'll learn more about it if you choose to go into that and do science later on, or become a doctor or whatever. these sayings are really toxic because they leave us up to our imagination. And that can be detrimental, especially when we've got a TV there implanting little bits of ideas into our subconscious, for our subconscious then to go, oh, that's an interesting thought, here, have that. And then for your conscious mind to go, yeah, oh man, I think some interesting things, you know? The reality of the circumstances is that all of our senses, our light, our sound, everything that we've got here is happening inside of our brain, all right? We don't see... It's really difficult to start talking about what's out there and what's in here, because all that we can really say is that we know what's going on in here somewhat, and it seems like there's these little particles of light and they travel in a straight line and they go into your eye and then they go down the middle of it and they go out the back. But the process is talking about something that we've identified through things that we've identified, that we've defined in boundaries based on bad assumptions, what that guy said, or possibly, yeah, maybe what our grandparents said, or their grandparents, or their grandparents. Here, have a think of this. Your process of seeing something goes in the general vicinity of light bouncing on something and being absorbed by that something. What is not absorbed by that something is then reflected back to your eye in a certain number range, and that number range indicates the color that is coming back to you. So if you look at a banana is not traditionally yellow with little black bits over it. It's traditionally every color except for yellow. You see yellow because that's the only color that it's not exactly accepting, and it's bouncing it back because it's not accepting it, it's not absorbing it. Kind of like how a crystal works. I mean, I don't want to give any clues or any spoilers away, but yeah, kind of like a crystal, and how lots of things are kind of like, especially in how they deal with light, like crystals. That's going to be a whole new level, that one. But if you take a second and you appreciate that everything that you can see is the bouncing back of these photons of light, all right, then what does anything look like without those bits of light? Or, because you can see the 7 colors of the rainbow, you think, or you perceive, depending upon who you are, I guess is a good point to add here, you see my boundary as defined in the general vicinity of a standard human form. Shoulders, a little bit of hair. Ta-da! I'm here. Surprise. If you were able to see a slightly higher bandwidth of light range frequencies into the what do they call it, the ultraviolet, slightly up into the ultraviolet, you might be able to see a bit more of my aura, my electromagnetic field, and it might indicate some sort of a color to you. Now that color is going to be different from the color that you see here or in any bit of here, because it's going to be in a different scale of light spectrum, or a different octave of light spectrum. If we stick, I quite like the music note concepts and ideas in order to be able to relay how these things interact with one another, because sound is, while we're dealing with light in this example, sound is really a fantastic way to describe how the universe works. It's kind of like using water as an analogy. They both work really, really well, and we'll get into that, no doubt, a lot. So when you take light away from things, you don't know what you're looking at. And that's not because all of a sudden we've turned out the lights. That's because everything that we're looking at is literally defined by the little bits of light that are bouncing off of it and bouncing back, right? And then we've got to keep in mind that all of the light that we're picking up that's bouncing back to us is within the tiniest 0.01% of the entire light spectrum, okay? Of 0.1% of 100% for those of you who are playing along at home. It's absolutely invigorating to think of your senses as a limiting factor. Yeah, I just made a really interesting statement there, didn't I? Only because when you see the limitations of an environment or you see the limitations of a system, you can then begin to see how you can expand outside of that, or how the system can grow beyond those limitations. In order to be able to fix a problem, first you must be aware of it. So if you're running around a place and you're busy watching TV, or one of those people completely hooked on the news at the moment, like literally a drug, okay? Yeah. You want to talk poker machines? Talk TV. Light, divert, and rambling results in me losing my place. So we'll try that again. So if we look at all of our senses as a limiting factor, that really gives us the ability to be able to move forward in ways which we had never conceived of as possible, because we'd never thought about what was possible, because we'd only ever looked at our senses in this closed environment, which was that they're built and they're good and that's it, and they're just going to get a little bit worse and a little bit worse as we get older. Well, it's a lot more complicated than that. And as it turns out, it's not just old age that makes things go like that. Later video. Lots of videos to come. Anyway, sound is very similar, but sound is a lot more easier to understand than light, because when we think of sound waves, and we can feel sound waves as they're coming in. If you're standing next to a speaker and you've got some sort of hair, you can feel the movement of the vibrations in your hairs, and you can know that sound is moving through the environment. But light, we think that light is not so much moving through the environment because we don't see it moving. It just happens so quick that we don't see it. But actually, all of this stuff that you are seeing right now, of course, is light that is going into your eye and projected from the back of your mind and then externalized. Right? This is the big reason why you will only find the answers inside of yourself, is because literally your entire system is an inverted outside backwards up mirror thing happening. And it should be, because what we've got here is a complicated and fascinating game or play of relativity. Okay, now relativity is a series of videos in their own right, but relativity is the relationship between two bits of information. Okay, and so we have to do the best we can to construct relationships with anything around us based upon the information that we have, give, and exchange. This includes our senses. How do you have a relationship with the house that you live in right now? Or, as a better example, how do you have a relationship with the car that you're driving right now, if you're driving a car? Has anyone noticed out there that cars have a very rich personality sometimes? Or houses, some houses do. Some pretty influential houses have very big personalities. So we actually got a couple of, and cars. We got movies about houses and cars with personalities too. Yes, these, we laugh about these things and we don't think very much of them, but guess what? It's now time to come back and revisit all these subjects, because we have just stepped through so many gates in the last 3 years that I can't even begin to describe to you how this world is so very different from what it was 5 years ago. And I mean that quite literally, okay? How? How is it different when it all looks exactly the same? Well, it's a problem of an internal perspective of an internal system. You need to sort of step outside of it in order to be able to get any sort of perspective, because within it, everything is relative. So if I said to you that time is speeding up, you would turn around and say, well, that's probably just your perspective of it. If I said, well, no, actually, it does literally seem to be speeding up, you said, how? I said, well, because it kind of looks like that, when I'm observing it. You make these assumptions, people make these, not you necessarily, you as an example, people make these assumptions like that I'm talking about seconds on the hands of a clock, but seconds on the hands of a clock are a relative count of a relative circle around a relative sun, which is relative to the position of the Earth. So no matter what happens, if we're talking about a measurement within this system that is relative to the system, it's going to change with the system. So if the system all of a sudden goes like this and stretches out really long, like for some reason, just for example, hypothetically, doesn't stretch out in, or doesn't grow in any direction except lengthways, if that's possible, then all of a sudden we notice, well, we don't notice that a meter is a lot longer, or a mile is a lot longer, or a foot is a lot longer. And the reason why we don't notice that is because it's a relative measurement to the system that we're perceiving. So as long as we perceive inside of this system, then the information is going to be correct, because it's all worked out on percentages instead of constant, like, laws. We don't deal with constants and laws. We deal with approximations and probabilities. Anything outside of that is a relative assumption that we have to keep in a very cautious little box, because we don't want assumptions running rampant all over the place. Now, a couple of things is I'm moving on forward through videos. Yes, it's probably about all that we're going to talk about in terms of senses today. I want you to move forward from this video thinking in terms of your senses and how you experience reality. Touch. Okay, let's go through them. Touch, sound, sight, smell, taste. Okay, pretty sure that was 5. So, as we move forward from here, I want you to really start thinking about them in reverse. And this is the big goal of anything I do with anybody, is to start creating a dichotomic or slightly schizophrenic perspective on things. And I don't mean schizophrenic in the mental health perspective. I mean in the separate views or opposite to parts type of, and how they interact with one another. Relativity, for another word. I want you to move forward from here thinking about the potentials of what is actually out there, knowing that everything that you see is only just the tiniest part of what is actually out there, right there in front of you, in your living room, right where you are, out in that park, if you just so happen to be there, sitting in the traffic lights downtown. Don't know why you'd be watching me on YouTube if you were in a car waiting in traffic. Good luck if you are. It's an amazing ability to be able to see these potentials. Not because you're going to be able to build a house with them, or be able to lay them on the floor and clean the floor with them, or anything practical in this world like that, but simply because what these things will do is shape and change how these practical things are possible in your world. And the result of that is going to be a much more enriched, much more passionate, much more enjoyable and soulful experience across the board. And it doesn't matter whether you are looking at rocks in the driveway, just bored in the sun, or going on a roller coaster somewhere, traveling somewhere, deep diving, whatever your experience, whatever your process, whatever your goal or desire is in life. When you get these connections through these points of perspectives and back to your source or your essence, then everything changes, and it's what everybody is looking for across the board. Doesn't matter what you talk about. We can bring it back to talking about what I'm talking about here, is that connection to everything. That's the thing that we miss from the moment that we're disconnected. So disconnected, because we're never ever not connected. It's a connected universe, and that's what we're going to start realizing, is that first of all, our senses don't divide. They don't create finite barriers that only exist in that reality. Barriers are as malleable as water. I don't know if that's really an apt analogy. Is water malleable? It is, but I tend to think of that term as something you can make with your hands and sort of leave. Water would just go psh, and sort of fall apart. But you can work with water, and it is quite malleable in a way. Anyway, you get my analogy and my message, I'm sure. Now, a couple of things about me before I move on. In terms of these videos moving forward, I can be quite animated. I can be quite passionate. I'm sorry if that comes off as overpowering for some who are slightly more introverted. I do have many introverted friends, and sometimes I know that I can be a little bit over the top for them. If that's the case, turn down the volume. Also, I'm me. I don't have any denomination. I don't have any allegiance aside from to I can't put it in words. It doesn't exist. It's not conceptual, which means if you see me do things like this, I'm not doing 666, okay? I'm doing, hey, this is okay. I'm here in Australia, and I do all sorts of stupid things. And in case I drop any swear words also, sorry about that. Especially YouTube, or anyone who is kind of like out there looking for whether or not I'm breaking any rules by watching these videos. And I haven't marked them as safe for language, and I do swear in a video, then sorry. That's not my intention, and I'll do my best to try to remember if I swear. Or, just express myself as I like to view it. Anyway, thanks for joining me. Thanks for joining us. Kaya night today. I'll have a friend with me quite often, and I'll introduce you as we go through. So, again, thank you for joining us. Can't wait till the next one. Don't know exactly what sort of schedule I'm running on. I'm hoping once a week, but to be honest, I'm just going to get on and do some videos whenever I can, at least for this first sort of run of series, basic bits and pieces of information, so we can really get into some more interesting topics that are relevant around the world. And like I keep insinuating, some things that are, I don't know if many people are talking about them out there or not, but that's partially the reason why I want to get out here and talk about it, because let's talk. This is going to go far, right? So let's have lots of fun together. And every time you watch one of my videos, you need to subscribe, like, and share. And then when you finish watching one of my videos and you turn off the YouTube, or you block your phone or whatever, after you finish my video, after you've shared it and you've liked it and subscribed, then you need to put down your phone and go do something positive and constructive, okay? Give someone a hug, blow a kiss to somebody, go outside and look at the sun, whatever. Just live life, okay? All right. Well, until next time, thanks for joining me.